folks, welcome back to my channel. My apologies if I get a bit croaky. I have had a really bad cold this week. I'm mostly recovered but still a bit coughy, so you know, hopefully I don't interrupt myself too much. So this is my June wrap up. I have notes because I read 11 things in June, which is a lot, and it's been at least a week since June, and so I've started to forget things. A lot of it's digital, so I only have 4 physical books, so there won't be very many props. But yeah, my June wrap up, I'm really pleased that I read 11 things. I kind of forced myself to because I acquired at least 8 books, which you'll see probably next weekend in my book haul for June. So I had to really push myself to, read more than I acquired. But yes, so I will start off. Like I said, a lot of things are digital because I was doing a lot of Hugo reading. So I started off the novelette category in June, and the first thing that I read was The Art of Space Travel by Nina Allan. This was okay. It was like, I think a lot of stuff was okay. It was a story that was set in a hotel about hotel employees who were getting ready to host the star astronauts of a new space mission. But at its heart, it was a story about a woman who, triggered by the talk of astronauts and stuff and the ramblings of her mother, who had dementia of some sort, she works at the hotel, and she's trying to figure out who her father was, because some of the things that her mother has said sort of makes her suspicious as to who it might be. And so the story is pretty much her preparing for these astronauts' arrival, trying to figure out how her mysterious father connects to the space program and to this book about space and space travel that she's had ever since she was a child, and that was always a really special book. So like I said, it was a good story. It just probably wasn't quite my thing. Yeah, so enjoyable but not spectacular. That was The Art of Space Travel by Nina Allan. The next thing I read was, I finished my reread of Persuasion by Jane Austen. This is not my favourite Jane Austen, but I'm getting fonder and fonder of it as I get older. I'm finding that with a lot of Jane Austens, actually. My opinion is changing when I get older. So this is one of the shorter novels, and it is the story of Anne Elliot, who many years ago when she was a girl was engaged to Captain Frederick Wentworth, and because her family disapproved, she broke the engagement off, and she's always regretted it. Now her father is in debt and has to leave their home, and she stays behind for a while to keep her sister company, who is married to a man nearby. And Frederick Wentworth turns up again because his sister-in-law and her husband have rented Anne's house. And yeah, it's basically them dealing with the anger and the pain of their past, and realising that yes, they still love each other. But it is also very much a social commentary on the idea of what good company is. In fact, there's actually a conversation that Anne has about good company, and whether good company is just people of rank and birth, or whether good company is actually intelligent people, pleasant people, kind people. And so they're kind of, it's about society and whether or not society places the right emphasis on various qualities. So yeah, that was Persuasion by Jane Austen. Next up, I read another novelette, and that is The Jewel and Her Lapidary by Fran Wilde. This was my favourite of the Hugo novelettes. It's a fantasy, and it's about, it's sort of set in the framing device of a travel guide, but it's where they're talking about mythology, but it's actually the story of the mythology as it actually happened. And so it's about this valley where there are lots of gemstones, and it's very famous for its gemstones. And in the past, the gemstones were magic, and they were ruled by a royal family who were called jewels, and their lapidaries were the sort of bound companions, not servants, but bound companions that shaped and worked with the jewels in order to control the magic so disaster wouldn't strike. And this is the story of the last jewel and the overthrow of the valley and her lapidary, who were trying to do their duty to their people, do their duty to the land, whilst in the face of overwhelming forces, and also the fact that the jewel was not trained for this because she was a younger daughter, and so she was going to be married off to another country, and so she didn't have those skills, but she had to find them within herself instead to do her duty. And so it's all about the idea of duty in royalty, and I really, really enjoyed it. So that is The Jewel and Her Lapidary by Fran Wilde. Then I read The Tomato Thief by Ursula Vernon, another novelette. And this one was set in the Wild West, but with magic, and it's about an old woman, and she's very proud of her tomatoes. She's really the only person in town who can grow the good tomatoes. And someone starts stealing them before they can ripen properly. And so she keeps missing out on her tomatoes this season, and there's a whole sort of adventure in that she discovers who it is. There's a magical curse involved, and she takes it on herself to try and help the woman that's under this magical curse, and has adventures all through the desert with trains and all sorts of weird things. But yeah, I really liked it because, I mean, I've read a few over the last few years of these stories set in a sort of a magical American West kind of desert place, and I'm not always particularly comfortable with them, but I actually quite liked this one, and I think it's possibly because it's about this old woman, and so it's got an older woman as a protagonist, and she's a very stubborn personality, but she does what she thinks is right, but not based around what everyone else thinks is right, but what she knows about the old magics of the desert. So that was The Tomato Thief by Ursula Vernon. And after that I read Touring with the Alien by Carolyn, Ives, Gilman. I wasn't really fond of this one. It was a thing where these aliens sort of turned up on Earth in these little habitats, and then each alien had like a person, like a human who had previously been abducted, who was their like PA assistant person, because turns out that these aliens don't really have a form. It's more like a coral or something like that. And it's basically about a bus driver who gets tapped to drive this alien from one side of the country to the other one so it can experience the world. And it's kind of about what it actually means to be human and to understand things the way that humans do when the aliens are such a completely different life form. I was a little bit confused, to be honest, and it just wasn't really my thing. So that was Touring with the Alien by Carolyn, Ives, Gilman. After that, I finished my Anne of the Island reread. So this is the third of the Anne of Green Gables books by Allan Montgomery. This is the one where Anne goes off to college on Nova Scotia, I think, rather than Prince Edward Island. And, you know, it's sort of her crossing further into womanhood, and expanding her horizons. There's romance, and there is that beautiful scene at the end where Anne, who's sort of lost her friendship with Gilbert because they both sort of turned in other directions, mostly because, as usual, she can't see her own heart, and she finds out that he's got, I'm not sure if I think it's typhus, something like that, and that he's expected to die, and so she spends this night heartbroken, and then she meets the servant of the guy who lives next to Gilbert's parents' place, and he tells her, you know, last night Gilbert got the turn and he's going to be okay, and she's so happy, and so they end up engaged because he's always been waiting for his Anne. And that scene, somehow, it still just makes me so happy, you know, every time Gilbert got the turn. So that was Anne of the Island. Then I read this one, Sailor Moon Volume 1 by Naoko Takeuchi. Apologies if I completely butchered that name. But yeah, this was my first manga. I've been thinking about trying manga for a while, and it's really complicated to try and get used to the fact that it's backwards. But I picked Sailor Moon because I was never a huge Sailor Moon, like, obsessive fan, but it used to be on in the morning before school, and so if I had time before school I would watch it, and I really, really enjoyed it. And so I figured that would be a really good way to sort of try my hand at manga, something that was still kind of familiar, but I wasn't completely obsessed with, so I wouldn't be upset if it was different. And so yeah, I really enjoyed this. I read it really quickly. It's, Sailor Moon discovering that she's Sailor Moon and then meeting some of her earliest companions and having adventures. And it's just cute. And like the characters are flawed. Like seriously, Sailor Moon as a character is like, she has tantrums and she's lazy and she's really actually not that great a character, but she's Sailor Moon anyway and it's really cute. So that was volume 1, Pretty Guardian. And I'll definitely be continuing on with that. So that's Sailor Moon volume 1. And after that, I started the graphic novel category for the Hugo Awards, and I read Saga volume 6 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. I'm not the biggest fan of Saga. I keep reading it because it keeps turning up in the Hugo packet, but this was actually one of the better ones from after the last few, and it was basically the two parents reunited again, chasing after their daughter who's gone missing, and getting into all sorts of shenanigans. Well, their daughter gets into her own shenanigans as she tries to come to terms with her identity as a crossbred, between two species, while she's in a prison with her grandmother. So yeah, it was better than the last couple of volumes, I think, but still probably not really my thing. And then I finished the Geek Feminist Revolution by Kameron Hurley. This is in the Best Related Work category for the Hugos, and it's a collection of essays by Kameron Hurley on pop culture, on her life, on feminism, on writing, all that kind of thing. It's divided into 4 sections, so it has all the 4 different sort of areas. Some of it was a bit repetitive occasionally, but that tends to happen, I think, when someone is writing about the same topic in various different ways. It was very angry. It was like viscerally very angry in the way that it's written, and very honest. She bared a lot of things, painful things about her life, and how it relates to her opinions on various things. But I enjoyed it. I really did. So I was really pleased to read that. That's the Geek Feminist Revolution by Kameron Hurley. After that, I reread Anne of Windy Willows by Allan Montgomery, which is the 4th Anne book. And this one, I've not always been fond of this one, but again, it's one of those classics that is growing on me. And I think a lot of classics in particular do grow on me as I age and understand them better. So this is Anne in the 3 years between her engagement in Anne of the Island and being able to get married. Because Gilbert still has to go through medical school. And so he's doing that, and she becomes the principal of this high school elsewhere on Prince Edward Island. And she's boarding, and so a lot of it is actually letters to Gilbert, or sections of letters to Gilbert, where she tells him about her various adventures and all the people that she's meeting, people she's getting along with, the people that don't like her, how she's dealing with that. So it's just more of Anne's adventures, and I really enjoyed rereading it. And then the last thing I read for the month of June was Black Panther Volume 1 by Ta-Nehisi Coates. I've probably butchered that. I really apologise. This one I was really looking forward to because I'd kind of heard some good things about it, and it was like, it's a comic book about people of colour, about people from Africa, and I'd heard there were some really awesome women in it. I spent most of it really, really confused. Because while it's volume 1, it actually relies really heavily on knowing what happened in the previous run. Because most of this volume is about the internal conflict that now exists in Wakanda, which is the country where the Black Panther is king. And so I spent a lot of it being really confused as to what was going on. I just did not have the background for it, unfortunately. I really liked a couple of the kick-ass female characters. There were a lot of really good female characters, which was good. But again, I didn't know why they were doing what they were doing. So there was that. And so I spent most of that really confused, which was really disappointing. And that was the last thing I read in June. So, So, like I said, I read 11 things in June. That was a really good reading month for me. A lot of them were short. They were graphic novels, they were novelettes kind of thing. And there was some, rereading going in there. But yeah, I'm really pleased with the amount I read. And we'll see how I go in July. I've just wasted a complete week of July because I've been sick, and when I'm sick I just can't do anything but basically read fan fiction. That's all I did all week, because I just didn't have the brain power. But yeah, so we'll see how I go, and I will see you again probably next weekend. Bye.